face to them. If I guess I'll look at the camera, put a face to the voice here, and then I'll go back to just sharing the other screen. But greetings all. I probably met most of you in the criteria office through the various workshops and things, but greetings there. Oh, I didn't start video yet. Okay, how about I start video? Let me use WebEx correctly here. Come on. It says preview. All right, hopefully you got it there. Anyway, I guess we'll get on to bigger and better things. All right, let's do that. Let's make this small. Okay. So yeah, there's a new UFC being developed, electric vehicle charging facilities. That word facilities a little bit could be misleading. It's not a building and facility. The word facility is used to delineate it from equipment, because this is not equipment for funding purposes. So category codes identify this as facilities, but it's not a building. This is just the charging facility things. Anyway, a little clarification there. But there's the new UFC number there, 355006. How do I go next slide? Oops, that's not the way to go to the next slide. Maybe that way. There we go. All right, so here's a overview slide here, agenda slide. I'm basically going to walk through the UFC in its current form. It is up for CP ESIP approval right now, so it's not advertised yet, but it is going through those approval processes. It has made it through the DWG, so it's made the first tier review for getting signed. But again, this is just more of an outline of that UFC here, and where it's going to go through some high points of the UFC. Plenty of time for questions. There's lots of rabbit holes on these slides that we try not to get sucked into. So the introduction and purpose. So the UFC is for these charging facilities, these chargers for government-owned and government-leased vehicles, light-duty vehicles, trucks, SUVs, cars, kind of thing. It does not cover low-speed electric vehicles like forklifts or golf carts, kind of thing. It does not cover POVs, and doesn't cover tactical vehicles yet. And it doesn't cover this. If you hear folks talking about vehicle to grid, it does not address the vehicle to grid yet. There's efforts to get some of these points brought into the document at a later date. But right now, it's just GOVs that we are looking to get charged on our basis. So we have different categories for these charging facilities. The first one is like a permanently installed. EVCF is electric vehicle charging facility, right? And so it's what you see when you drive around, right? You see a pedestal somewhere with some plug cords connected to it. Usually one charger can supply 2 to 4 vehicles. So you'll strategically place these chargers where they can, hit multiple vehicles at the same time. But this is at the root of what the UFC is getting after, are these pedestal type charging stations. Another kind is the standalone. Think of a standalone as like a trailer battery with a solar panel or something on it that can charge that battery over time. It's not exactly the right picture here, but you get the idea, is that you can put these things in, trailer them out to remote locations where you can top off a vehicle or have a vehicle charge where you don't have grid power available. So those are called standalone. And then another type is portable. These are like plug and play kind of things. It plugs into either a regular 110 outlet or like a 240 volt outlet, like a dryer plug or something. And the other end as a plug that goes into the car. So these are portable. They can be left in the car or not. Obviously carried around. And you can. It's another way of charging the vehicle where you're not at a fixed permanent standalone, or excuse me, a permanent charging equipment station kind of place. So those are the kind of categories there. Of note here, as I hit slide 7 here, there's in the NDAA FY23, there is language in there regarding electric vehicle charging facilities. Basically says for all government vehicles planned to be parked at a facility, provide charging for 15% of those vehicles. So it's just a way of implementing charging stations on our new projects or renovations where there are planned GOVs to be there, provide charging capabilities for 15%. Again, just the GOV population and just 15% of the anticipated population. So just know that's out there. It's included in the UFC as guidance there. Okay, a little bit more into these charging stations. There's different levels: level 1, 2, and then either like you'll hear it as level 3 or you hear it as DC fast charging. And the levels are self-explanatory from respective. Level 1 is your slowest and your lowest voltage charge. Level 2 is a faster charge, and then the DC fast charging, just in the name, charges much faster. So really of note here is the bottom row of the table. Level 1 charger gets you about 5 miles an hour, right? So if you got a vehicle that has a 300-mile range, it'll take you like 2 days to charge it from empty, right? So not very efficient from a day-to-day operations, and why the UFC will say, hey, don't even deal with level 1 charging, just because it's just not fast enough. Level 1 charging is more for the residential and the portable types, where you can plug into a regular 110 outlet and get a charge. But again, that's not the way we are moving forward with the UFC. We're going with the minimum of level 2 charging, which is requires 240 volts AC input, but you get about 25 miles an hour. So your same vehicle can, with a 300-mile range, can charge overnight if it's empty. And then there's DC fast charging, where you see it's 4 times faster, right? So you can get a 300-mile range in just a couple of hours. And then there's the extreme fast charging, the XFC. That's even a higher electric demand to push the electrons through into the car even faster. Not all cars can accept this level of charging, but Teslas are leading the way here with that extreme fast charging there. But these are the different levels: level 1, 2, and 3. Typically, excuse me, DC is level 3. But level 1, that's more of your residential stuff, right? So we're not going to be dealing with much of that unless it's a portable unit inside of a car. We're going to be dealing with level 2 and 3 on our bases. And I know the questions are left till the end, but I'm totally fine with getting questions along the way. But anyway, we can keep going if there aren't any. There's several plug types here in the North America and Europe. There's different plug types, in Japan even. Most of the plug types you see by manufacturers here in the US are the J772 plug. That's everybody but Citzler, basically. And Tesla is that NAX plug, and still a plug war on what's going to win, beta versus VHS kind of thing, all over again. So just know that, but most of the plugs now are the J1772 plugs. Your Ford, Chevy, Kia, Hyundai, all of them are that type.
David, there's 2 questions that popped up in the chat.
Okay, yeah, and I can't see the WebEx. So if you could help.
I'll read them. No. I can read them while you continue with the presentation. So I'll read 2 or 3 real quick. Is the draft UFC available yet for EVCF?
I normally share a draft as it's getting signed out, but this one, there's been some changes within the government that it might impact what's in there today, even though it's up for signature. I'm not even sure it'll get signed out as it currently is. I hope it does. It's not that I won't share it. There's just there's been some movement on the topic that I'll be a little leery. If it was shared within the government only, perhaps yes.
Okay.
But
The,
anyway,
the other
sorry.
question is why did the name change from EVCF from
That's right.
EVSE?
That's right. So EVSE, which is probably the more common term, and it's actually the industry standard term, is electric vehicle supply equipment. And it being called equipment gives it the analogy of not the analogy, get the perception of its different funding source. Basically, boiling it down, equipment doesn't come with sustainment dollars. And so we needed this procurement for these things to be real property, not personal property. So that way we can get sustainment dollars programmed in with it. So the category codes that were developed, and they're coming here in a couple slides, identify it as real property. And being that it is real property, it wasn't, we didn't think it was prudent to keeping that name equipment in the name to help, stir some confusion on whether it's equipment or not. So that's why it says facility in the title of the UFC. And I acknowledge that when I first read the word facility, I think of a building that's charging vehicles, right? And that's not the case here.
Okay. And I have just one more question, and then I'll let you get back to presentations.
Sure.
Can a single charger be equipped with both NACS and J1772?
Yes. You'd have to, yes, you just order it that way.
All right. Thank you.
Easy answer there. Yeah. So here are the plug types again. It's basically the Tesla plug type and the J1772 as far as we're mostly going to be concerned, unless we're doing the DC charging. Anyway, okay. So with these chargers, you have networked and non-networked, right? So network charger means it's connecting and talking to something, and a non-network obviously doesn't, right? So your non-network charger would be a charger that just supplies electricity to the car. And that's it. So if something's plugged in, it just supplies electricity to the car. With the network charger, you can do more fleet management type of things. You can tell it to charge vehicles at different times of the day. You can say, hey, if the vehicle is a 75% charge, don't bother filling it up until 2 a.m, where electricity is cheaper. You can make it such that when you have 5 vehicles plugged in, it can know which vehicle is the least power and devote more power to it so that they all come together at the same time. Or you can prioritize chargers if you have a bank of chargers. So there's a slew of features that you can do from a fleet management perspective with a network charger. You can, we're not doing this in the DoD, but vehicle to grid might be a thing. And so we might provide power to the grid as a distributed renewable energy source that we're not doing yet, but that's just another feature of some of these network chargers. And so this just shows sort of the communication. Your basic communication is the charger to the car, and networked and non-network chargers have to at least do that, right? The charger has to be able to talk to the car and know that it's okay to provide power to the car, and the car is ready to accept power, kind of thing. And the car can tell the charger the state of charge. And then you have just a charging to it, like some sort of a cloud network, where a particular vendor's cloud network, and you have a subscription to that, and you're able to monitor your fleet and do some of the nice fun things I was talking about just a few moments ago. And then you have the cloud network. The cloud network is that some of these manufacturers were trying to get some industry standards so that they talk to each other even. There's a lot of proprietary protocols right now, but there's efforts to get those standardized such that there'll be more interoperability between manufacturers. So there's a couple different protocols. You have the car to the charger, you have the charger to other chargers on the same network, and then you have cloud-based solutions talking to other cloud-based solutions. Obviously, with all this network, there's a rabbit hole here with cybersecurity. with interoperability, with non-charger systems like your EMCS. If you want to tie these chargers to a load management system on the base, and you can say, hey, if my load gets to be too close to peak, I will load shed my chargers, perhaps, right? Or you can say, I don't want to charge until I'm charging at night, or whenever the peak load is at a certain level. So there's, again, all kinds of opportunities with these network chargers and what you can do. And then PII, that's really there more for, we start charging POVs, right? If we're going to start carrying credit card information from individuals, our employees, our names and the zip codes and things. But these even leased vehicles have a credit card associated with them, right? So there is information there even on a leased vehicle. So again, there's things that there's no showstoppers there with respect to cyber, but just kind of understand that there certainly are some concerns there, and these concerns are currently being talked about at the DoD secretariat levels. There is a concern with cyber and these network chargers. So there's nothing's out yet, but there's certainly talk. They're certainly concerned about some capabilities and things there. So that's a brief overview. This is another rabbit hole. The network charging, you can really go down, and we could spend 2 hours talking about this stuff here. But I'll move on if there's not anything major here for a question. You have infrastructure, right? So just as with our regular buildings and our base, our power's got to get to these chargers, and they get to with the same kind of distribution system that our buildings do, through a distribution transformer, power throughout the base. These transformers are going to need these chargers are pretty sensitive to harmonics, so a K-rated transformer is a prudent thing. But just with any other electrical distribution system, right? You're going to have switches. You're going to have duct banks with this connectivity. There's going to be a communications pathway. If there are meters involved, there's AMI, grounding, lightning protection, and things. And not that it's a charging facility infrastructure per se, but there are fire protection concerns, right? We all heard about these car fires that happen where a battery catches fire and the fire department has a hard time putting the fire out. So we are certainly concerned with these charging facilities and where we charge cars, and if they're in garages, if the garages are enclosed, and ventilation, and all those fun features to consider. So that's kind of why I just threw fire protection here more for that than it is infrastructure, but certainly something like cybersecurity to work out when you are planning these charging stations. And so here are the category codes I mentioned. So each of the services has new category codes made up that they're considered real property now. So these are the different ones. Note that there's not the level 2 and level 3 charges are where we have for the Navy. And the Army and the Air Force has a level 1, but we're not probably going to be putting in level 1 charging because of how slow it is. 5 miles an hour won't give you very much unless you're going overnight. So anyway, but these are the category codes for the various level 1, level 2s for the various services. So now some planning considerations. So we've talked about the network stuff, just in putting these and determining where these places, where these equipment goes. Lots of things to consider. Lots of moving pieces that try to get your head wrapped around in terms of how much the cars are driven, what parking spaces is available, if there's power there, distance from a facility, how big is the vehicle, right? How long are they able to charge between sessions? There's a lot of considerations that goes into selection of the charging type based on the fleet, available power, or whatnot. So just a laundry list of things to consider with when citing these things. And so the UFC has got some paragraphs on most of these topics. There's also billing, and I'm not necessarily talking about POV billing here per se, because it doesn't cover POVs yet. But if you have tenants in your building that you're trying to bill for their electricity usage, you would want to bill their electricity usage for the cars that they're using if you've got a tenant. So there's multiple ways of determining a payment structure for that, whether it be in charge time and the cost of electricity at the base, or straight kilowatt hours put in the vehicle if there's a meter there. If you have subscription fees or transaction fees associated with that, those are all the considerations to be made when you're establishing a rate to charge tenants for their electricity usage. And so it will very much be a case by case, or at least a base by base perspective, just because the utility rates are different all across the country. And the next few slides are just some parking layouts, right? So this first slide here just has, one charger smacked right in the quadrant of 4 parking places. So you can get these chargers with 4 plugs on them. And so in theory, that one charger there can be sized with 4 plugs and charge 4 vehicles simultaneously. The next slide here is probably what you see a lot, is just the charger on the curb somewhere, where they're strategically located, where one charger can hit 2 stalls. Another is where you have like a median or an island in the parking lot, so you can put these chargers in them. Similar to the first one, this has an island configuration, but here you can just stack these up in an island and get cars on both sides if you get the right charger. And then if this is a parallel parking configuration here, where it's just, throw it in the center of the parallel parked, whether it's that way it can accommodate hitting the front or the back of the car. So there's just another configuration where if the space is available, is going to be in a parallel parking. Again, these are just ideas for potential site layout, not exact dimensions that thou shalt must follow, but there are some standard dimensions in there. But obviously the MTCUD document would govern this for the civil engineers, know that pretty well. Also, one of the appendices of the UFC, there's some best practices in there. I've only taken a couple best practices out of the UFC for this training here, but having some sort of implementation plan, right? Just knowing how you plan on charging the vehicles, if you plan on taking advantage of some of this smart technology as far as the load management perspective. If you want to tie it into your microgrid for load shedding purposes or whatever, right? Have some sort of a plan on what you want to do across the base. And another thing is some training here with the EV learning curve, right? So you might have employees that are unfamiliar with even how to plug in a car. And it sounds kind of silly, but if you don't know how to get the cars plugged in, or so some training there on the range of vehicles. Range anxiety is a real concern. So just start developing some training for the operation of these vehicles. Then UFC just wraps up with glossary, acronyms, and references. Then too many lists here just in this presentation, but there's all of the acronyms have definitions throughout, and a series of references with ISOs and ASTMs and ULs and all of the executive orders, lots of references throughout that document. So they're all listed back there in the appendix. And so in good military fashion, here's the agenda slide. I hope I have hit these topics today, and I guess that would be success if I have, or at least I said what I was going to do and I did what I say I was going to do, kind of thing. And then that's kind of it. Plenty of time for discussion here. That's why I didn't mind questions along the way. I can certainly go back to slides. there's lots of rabbit holes that we could really spend some time in, particularly with network charging and cybersecurity and charging POVs and things, and shared chargers with government POVs, and shared tenants that are using the same charger. There's certainly lots of rabbit holes there. But Edward, I would defer to you. Is there any questions come up along the way, or?
Yes, there's another one that came up is any idea when the UFC will be finalized? What's the timeline for this being executed
Yeah, so
or posted or published?
yeah, the CP and ESIP have a backlog of documents that they're getting through. I don't know the exact number, but it's got to be in the double digits. Um, I have a cybersecurity UFC that we posted for CP ESEP review and approval in January, and it's going to get released this month. I got a microgrid UFC that was pushed out in April, and it's still at the CP, trying to get a couple of the CP signatures. So it's probably 6 months out, because the version that's gone up for review went up for review about a month and a half ago. And again, there's been some talk at the DoD level regarding these charging facilities, so that might impact their attentiveness to getting it reviewed quickly. But if history proves, it's probably 6 months out.